Thanks. It was lovely and cool when we came in earlier. It's getting warmer. I tell you, it's cooler here, so you guys should just come on up. We'll do it together. Right, so, yeah, my name's Andrew McGrath. Title is Designing for Alien Life. I had to have something to kind of intrigue you, because if I told you it was really about you, would be off making calls, I'm sure. So first of all, I'm going to talk about me. Then I'm going to talk about them, and then I'm going to talk about them. Okay, and all will be revealed, I hope, during that. So a little bit about me. First of all, I started at BT actually doing virtual reality, building virtual reality spaces out of data. Then I moved to 3, where I ran a mobile UX group for 3. And then Orange, where I ran a mobile team at Orange, and then ran the global UX team at Orange. And now I'm at a handbrake turn onto Thomson Reuters, as going from consumer to very much the professional side of the industry. And at midnight tonight, I will no longer work for Thomson Reuters because they're going to split it in 2. So on Monday morning, but I don't know that it's not going to be as simple as Thomson and Reuters. I don't know. Because otherwise you get that logo tool to create the name, right? Yeah. So I'll be in a new company in Monday morning with a new boss, and I'll have a new name at some point. So the last few weeks, I've been kind of splitting my team into some that are staying with the old one half of the company, and some that are going with the other half. So a very, very odd time. Writing your own job description for your role as it used to be in the other company. It's like an obituary. You're writing, well, I used to do this, and I used to do that. Anyway, so reading from your right to left, incidentally. So I started at BT, ended up at Thomson Reuters. And in all of those groups, I've been running UX teams. But first of all, a little bit about Thomson Reuters, which I hope I'll get some video to run.
Question: what is an answer? And how can you measure the value of one? Today, there are millions of people and places devoted to providing answers. And that's the problem. Answers are cheap, and everybody's got one. But trusted answers from trusted sources, that's a rare and precious commodity. Yes, they're out there, but finding them on your own has never been harder. A reality made more urgent when entire industries are undergoing massive transformation, and opportunities are only opportunities if you can separate fact from near fact. At Thomson Reuters, we don't simply understand the need for factual integrity, we're obsessed with it. Living in a decision economy, we've built our company around the need to connect our customers with the most accurate and unbiased information out there. So when you tap into our unique information ecosystem, you're getting the intelligence, technology, and human expertise you need to find trusted answers. Any questions? The Answer Company. Thomson Reuters.
I'm hoping to go back to PowerPoint. Escape, yep. Oh. Better go back that way, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So yes, so you probably all heard of Reuters, news agency, but most people haven't heard of the kind of Reuters part is kind of the smallest part of the company. Thomson Reuters generally delivers content to accountants, bankers, and financial professionals, and the Reuters news and photography is kind of a part of the service that we provide to them and to organisations like the BBC. And the part of Thomson Reuters that I am in is called TR Lab. So I report to the chief data scientist at Thomson Reuters until midnight tonight, that is. And there's a very short video, again, just kind of showing the kind of things we do. And I warn you in advance, the music is kind of disturbing, and if you ask for it later, I'll refuse to give it to you because it will ruin your health, I think, if you listen to it more than twice, which I've done. And in there you will see there'll be a Canadian celebrity, so keep your eyes peeled. There's a prize. You get to meet him. No. So I just wanted to show you that because very, very quickly you can see there's a lot of data visualization going on in there. We have incredibly large data sets. We have information for all the legal precedents in like the UK, the US, Canada, and that's all in large data lakes. And on top of that data, we can build visualizations. We can understand the direction of law. We can understand from the data the likelihood that that the judge that's going to be on your trial is going to go one way or another based on certain criteria, how they tend to decide. So it's an amazing data set to look at. And obviously in the financial side as well, we can combine legal and data information. Incidentally, I really hope that the organisers will put that music on during the drinks later. I think it'll really, really help. So anyway, I'm in Thomson Reuters Labs till midnight, and what we do is I run a UX team and we build user experiences on top of those data sets in support of our professional customers. So far, so good. So what else? So I work with all of Thomson Reuters business units. So for instance, we have photographers all around the world who are photographers and journalists who are recording images and stories and delivering that for breaking news. But they're also there all the time. So we have this kind of longitudinal news activity, which is called Wider Image. It's out there at the moment, really interesting. And we design the iPad and the web experience. It's really it's the long version of the story. And and actually one of the interesting challenges with designing this product is that every time you're reviewing it, you get captivated by the images and the story. It's the most difficult experience to review because the content takes you over when you're supposed to be concentrating on whether the button's in the right place and whether the animations work correctly. So that's one of the things. That's one example of the kind of thing we work on. Kind of before and afters between before a storm or after a storm. I say our journalists stay there all year round. And you've seen this a few times today, or variations of it, the double diamond. I'm in a large corporate, so I tend to not vary the number of ways I describe the design process inside the corporate, because I want to try and kind of have continuity of the methods that I'm exporting to that organisation. But we find this a very useful tool to use within our company, and actually it's also worth saying. So I studied product design at Glasgow School of Art, and kind of very depressed this morning to wake up and see that they're planning to knock down the building, which is a real shame. It's very heartbreaking to see that. And I did product design, but in actual fact, I did very little of what you'd call the hardware end of product design. It was very much about the design process, and very little about the technology you needed to understand. And I think a message on this AI side, which is from a designer's perspective, you want to kind of immediately or try and identify your redundancies. What are the things that you're really good at that it's going to be very easy for something else to do soon, and concentrate on the things that it's not going to be easy to do. So if you probably remember, 15 years ago, Macromine Director was, a lot of design degrees were teaching Macromine Director with some design theory, and Macromine Director is kind of nowhere, right? So what I love about the course that I did at Glasgow was it was about design methodologies, and then I was told, you don't need to worry about injection molding or rotary molding. You will learn that when you're out there. You will learn the technology that you need to when you are working. So similarly, I have gone from applying those methods from product design in virtual reality, and now in information spaces and artificial intelligence. So that would be my discussion point on the AI side of things from a design perspective. And I use this inside our company to sort of explain the double diamond, partially because this item here is one of the signature items throughout the entire offices of Thomson Reuters. Everyone uses it to make themselves hot water. So at the top I say this is where you're kind of you're designing the thing well. So you've got a kettle and you're making it better, or so-called better. And at the end, you're trying to satisfy that need of, okay, I'm upstairs and I want this to be hot water by the time I get downstairs. So I'll switch it on from upstairs, because that will give me instant hot water when I'm downstairs. That's brilliant. But actually, if you go back to the human need, which is I want hot water instantly, then you can kind of skip all of that and go to this item at the bottom. I find that a very useful tool inside the organisation to explain the double diamond to my colleagues. So now we're going to talk about them. And so I mentioned to you that the first three organisations were very consumer-oriented, and now Thomson Reuters is really designing for professionals. And I think that switch from consumer to professional was a very difficult. It's a very difficult move if anyone's made that move. It's very difficult because you actually you realise how much you're innately rely on your own ability as a consumer, or to emote with consumers. And as soon as you're in the professional world, you're slightly at sea. So I've got some of the challenges that we face inside this space, which I want to kind of tease out for you, for those who are working in this space or are intending to work in this space. So the first one is scarcity. Then we're going to talk about understanding, simplification, empathy. Empathy, of course, we've talked about a few times. Scarcity. So, of course, I'm a user-centered designer. I love talking to users, like to understand what they're trying to achieve and help them to do it. But my customers are accountants, bankers, and lawyers, and they're difficult to find and recruit in a conventional sense. There aren't that many agencies you ring up and say, I need 10 lawyers, over the next week, and they can have £50 each. First of all, they don't respond to that call to review your user experience. They certainly won't do it for £50. They've got much more important things to do than talk to you, so they will cancel on you at the last minute, much more than the normal cancellations you get when trying to talk to consumers. They're very hard to observe. You don't really get invited into the trading floor to see how people are making money off stocks. They're not that keen for you to look over their shoulder. As lawyers discussing a case, they're not that keen to invite you in. And also, it's kind of hard to observe as well. And it's hard to understand, and they're extremely coy about giving back feedback as well. So, for instance, if your job is to make, if you've got an algorithm that helps you to make money off share prices, you don't really want to share that with someone. So you will delve into their workflow, and then they'll become very coy about certain parts of it because they don't actually want you to know anything about it, which is kind of not what normally happens when you're talking with customers. So this hard to understand thing is one I just kind of want to take into a little bit more detail. Does anyone know what MACD is?
I do in the telecoms context.
Okay.
So move, add, change, delete is what we do to a customer for their products and services.
It's not that one.
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone know what opinion vacated by means? No. Does anyone know what brackets mean in accounting? This is usually someone that knows this one. Yeah, negative values, yeah. Why can't it just be a line, right? So MACD is moving average convergence divergence. Of course, you're all kicking yourself now, right? It's a very important way to understand whether you should buy or sell stocks. And when I first heard it, I thought it was the McDonald's share price. So you can imagine you're trying to understand the user and trying to improve the workflow, and you can't even understand the language that they're using or why they should care about the thing you've just removed from their page. You've removed something that they care about because you don't understand what it means. For those who are interested, that's the MACD of MACD. There you go. That's my share price joke. Done. Opinion vacated by, this is in the legal space. It's a vacated judgment, makes a previous legal judgment legally void, usually the result of judgment of an appellate court, is another word, which overturns, reverses, or sets aside the judgment of a lower court. An appellate court may also vacate its own decisions. Since Germany went out of the World Cup, I have vacated a lot of my earlier opinions on who I thought was going to win. But that is something, in order for you to understand that legal data set and build a tool to let your users understand the meaning, you're going to have to learn this and what it means. And that's just one of the terms that you have to have. Now, you could train as a lawyer and an accountant and do a financial degree, but that's quite a lot. I think only architects train for longer, I think. So, you have to be incredibly humble. And you actually discover that the kind of community you're talking to are actually very patient with you as they explain again and again a concept that it's taking you. You heard it a week ago, and you'll ask it again, because it takes an awful long time to absorb this and turn it into something which you can then help them. And parenthesis in accountancy is a negative number. Simplification is something we're always asked to do. The tools that our professionals have kind of accumulated over time, and we're there to try and help to improve the workflow and simplify things. But in actual fact, they don't really want something simpler. They want something more powerful. They want something more powerful tuned to them. So they don't really want a light version of Photoshop. And then also, the products themselves are highly textual. So in the legal world, there's no images. Images are kind of useless. There's no photographs. Everything you might normally reach for to create visual interest isn't there. And lawyers themselves are highly textual. They enjoy reading more and understanding things in text more than you do, usually. So they are actually, you might be denying them something that they absorb quicker, because that is what they're used to do. Tax products are highly numeric and textual, and very complex labeling. Labeling inside these worlds is very long. And you try and shorten them, or you try and simplify them, and you change the meaning. Financial products are also highly numeric and complex labeling. They do have the benefit of being very chart-oriented. There are data sets. You can actually construct data sets. And in the legal world, there's an awful lot of work now going on to generating a visual understanding of the law as you're doing your research. And that is an interesting area. So this simplification piece needs deep understanding. And in my first couple of years at Thomson Reuters, I was using, I had a very small team at the time, and I was using agencies. And I would get an agency in, they would spend the first 4 weeks, trying to understand the user, and then, at the end of it, not got far enough to be able to make a significant change in the experience. So in that way, you really need to either find an agency which has already a deep understanding of those customers, or you have to develop that expertise in-house. So an example is that this is Thomson One Anywhere. So this is a tool for high value individuals. So if you have liquid assets of more than £2 million or dollars rather, then you will probably outsource the management of that to someone else. Anyone in the room? Anyone in the room, one of those people, or wants to put their hands up to it? Yeah. So I can't even imagine having enough money to ask someone else to look after it at that level. But this is a tool for wealth managers to look after other people's money, and we were asked to build a mobile version of it. Where do you start, right? Anyway, so we did, and we started with the iPad version, which is on the far side, for those of you that need that explanation. And we started on that side, and went quite well. And then they said, okay, we thought it was quite a challenge to get it down to that. But then actually they said, we want a mobile version. And we thought, no one will ever, we'll do it, but no one will ever use it. And of course, as we all know, everyone's using the mobile version, because even if it's not giving them everything, we have got it down to the point where they are getting loads from it. And the mobile version is by far the most used of that service. But here's an example of one of the sections of that app, which is it's the asks and the puts. So it's an options page. It's a page where we sort of redesigned this page, and every time we tried to talk to someone on the project about how you used the page, no one on the project, including the product owners, could explain that page properly. We always had a question that they couldn't answer. Oh, I don't know the answer to that. And in actual fact, deep down, the answer is that once you understand options, then you won't be doing your job anymore. You will be off making a lot of money doing options. So it's like, as soon as you know, you're gone, right? So that's, still want to learn that one, I can tell you. So we've done scarcity, understanding, simplification. Now I want to do empathy. I don't know about you, I'm definitely from the kind of side of design, Scottish. Got that idea that, we're all one family, all one group of people, and so I need to love my user. I need to kind of really feel empathy for my user, and these are my users. Now, obviously, I went online and searched Google for bankers, and then I may have picked the ones that you would feel least empathy for. And then there's lawyers. Anyone excited? Wait for the next slide. Accountants. Accountants more difficult because it could be anyone, right? It could be, working out your budget for next week, or looking at an interesting tweet on the left there. I don't know. They're the most difficult to kind of understand. They're the most secret. They're almost nocturnal, as far as I'm concerned, in that sense. So when I first started at Thomson Reuters, my first job was to create an iPad interface for mergers and acquisition lawyers. So merger and acquisition lawyers they're not like doing divorce law and family law or helping you sell shares or anything like that, or dealing with a border dispute between your garden wall and someone else's garden wall. What they do is they observe the market and they kind of bring huge organizations together, or smaller ones, and then usually cut up the assets and help, and then make an absolute fortune out of doing that. And so most people here would never get near a mergers and acquisition lawyer. Possibly an up-and-coming agency opening in multiple countries might have to deal with a mergers and acquisition lawyer at some point when they sell themselves to a big Indian infrastructure company, but that's for later. But I immediately had a problem where I just didn't care. I just didn't care, and I sat at my desk looking at the screen, not knowing what to do. I didn't care about these people whatsoever, and I found at that point, very strangely, that I couldn't work. No matter that someone would at some point say, you need to do your job or you're out, I couldn't do anything meaningful because I didn't care. So I had to go on this kind of, and maybe not everyone's like that, but I have to care or I cannot work. So I went on this kind of crash course to try and generate empathy, right? So I watched movies that had bankers in it, right? I went to the courts of law in London. You can walk in and sit in. I just sat in there and watched them and saw that they had cups of tea and they were late because they had to go to the toilet, and they just build things. And you kind of start to realize that these are people. And then I started to do telephone interviews with some of them as well, and you discover that they don't like, they're kind of tight with their money as well, even if they've got a lot of it, and they're more interested in dealing with their kids than talking to you. So suddenly you realize they're really actually not all these sort of awful people we got no empathy for. And so in order to kind of work, you generate that empathy. So we actually also have, the method I now use is I actually go to a lot of individuals like, financial lawyers and accountants in particular have to maintain the knowledge of law, or they will lose their license. So they have to kind of do, yearly trainings. There's lots of conferences for lawyers and accountants. So I do quite a lot of business travel at the moment, and so it's very glamorous. I go to like Las Vegas and hang out in enormous accountancy events while someone gives PowerPoint slides on the latest changes to family law in Tennessee to like 1,000 people in front who are there just to get a credit to say that they've been there. But what you can do is, because they're like doing this all the time, they're going to these conferences every year. If you hang out there, you can get talking with them and you find out everything about them because they're desperate to talk about their lives. And you discover things like they don't want they want email on their mobile. Lawyers don't want email on their mobile because or they don't want to admit it. If they think that that they could read that email at any point, then they know that you'll send the email and then you'll ring them up. Why have you not done that yet? So they say, well, I don't want email on my phone because then I can say, I don't have email on my phone. I'm sorry, I haven't seen it. I'm out of the office. That kind of plausible deniability. So you learn these things about the people, and that's how we've kind of built empathy and interest. And that's what makes it possible to be a designer in that world. And once you've kind of bridged that empathetic divide, working in this area of understanding those professionals and how you can help them build these information spaces and the data sets is incredibly rewarding. Okay, so I'm going to talk about them now. Incidentally, I've totally lost track of time because I think I was supposed to finish at 3. Okay. Talk about them, which of course is artificial intelligence. There's been a lot of that talked about the last couple of hours, and probably much better than I have, and so I probably won't go into some areas because they've been covered. But Thomson Reuters, so the group that I'm in has a very large cognitive computing team. And so my design team and I have worked with them on a number of projects in support of these data sets. So they're in Toronto and London. So, I really, and this is the beginning, pose the question, which is how do we design experience between a person and a cognitive computer experience? And I think that's come up a few times as well. It's a collaborator. It's something you have to deal with rather than something you use in that sense. So the first thing I want to say is that the dialogue between cognitive computing practitioners and design practitioners is in its infancy in many ways. When I spoke to the data scientists in my organization, they said to me, when I met with them, I said, how can we help you? And they said, well, you can't. Nothing that you can do is going to help us because all we'll do is we'll make sure that the list that the user has to read will be shorter. So in this example, we are filtering using natural language to give someone who has to read information less information to read. So they were like, it's really simple. We don't need you. It's just a shorter list, right? And I didn't have an answer to that. I was like, maybe you're right. But of course, it's more complex than that. And then the other area is this trust in systems. So we heard this morning, Felicia, where these systems were coming up with an answer, but we've lost faith in these systems and the answers. And you want to understand why. The computer has said this, but actually, why have you said that? And you want to kind of interrogate it to understand. So these systems, not only do they have to give you an answer, they have to be prepared to explain how they got that answer in a way that you can understand. And so we actually we used this natural language processing. We used it in a tool which I'll go into very quickly. I will mix that one out and that one because we've kind of done it. Okay, so this is a tool that Thomson Reuters provides to banks and financial institutions. It's called World Check One. It's when you go to the bank and you want to open a bank account, the bank is legally obliged to check that you are not, a money launderer, or that you have connections to slavery, or that you're on a banned list or you have connections to prescribed countries that you can't do business with and so on. So one of the things they have to do is check whether you are who you say you are. And one of the things that Thomson Reuters provide is the tool that lets you look people up, right? In this case, you wouldn't be on this. This is a list of public information about, if basically this is compiled from public information from courts and also financial rulings. So the first thing they do is you can look someone up. And of course, I got access to this very briefly when I was working on it from a design perspective, because you don't get access to this under normal circumstances. First thing you do is look your own name up, of course. So you're not in it unless there is a reason or why you should be in it. And incidentally, you will get people in here who have done nothing wrong, but are in a position of significant power. So ambassadors will be in here because, and anyone related to an ambassador, for instance. So if you're related to someone that's got an important position, you will be in here. Not because you can't have banking on that, but it's because the bank will be obliged to pay closer attention to your bank account because of you might be receiving large amounts of money because as a bribe, so the bribe doesn't go directly to the person in power, the bribe goes to someone else. So these are, as you probably know, financial institutions are places where money can be, sent out to various circumstances. They end out in Panama, the Panama Papers. It's a great way of hiding the trail of information. So this is one of the tools that's used by companies. And so we were asked to improve the user interface. And they're starting to use natural language processing as part of that. And the interesting part about this is that this is when the list comes in. So one part of this is this public record of whether someone has been done for money laundering or drug trafficking, things like that, which is in here. But there's also a link which will search the internet for that person. And that's where they use natural language processing, and they also try and use, for instance, they sort of try and find the name, but then also try and see if the age is about right, and whether the country is about right. So it will try and figure out whether this article about someone in a newspaper is likely to be the same person that you're looking at in front of you, based on what would normally be someone having to read it to say, well, that's the wrong country, or that person's too old, or that's a man, not a woman, this is a woman. And then the other thing is, of course, natural language processing lets you separate out things like, it says, Andrew McGrath helped someone who was, by making a donation to a drugs company, keyword search, you might pick up drugs and Andrew McGrath. There's a simplified version and say, drugs, Andrew, be careful. But actually, if you can understand the meaning of that, you know that that was doing a kind of good thing. So it can also understanding the meaning of words. So what it does is it returns a list of articles that the bank should look at. And it has to rank them in order. But one of the very clear things we were given, and it's the first time I've ever had legal counsel in a user, in a kind of UX scrum, which is that we weren't allowed to actually say this person is a problem. We're only ever allowed to say, you should look at this, you should look at this person, and you should read these articles. And this is the order you should read these articles in. And then if you wanted to dismiss individuals for particular reasons, like wrong country, then we were allowed to dismiss other people for the same reasons. We're trying to build ways of reducing the amount of analysis that needs to be done by someone to okay or not a bank account or so on. And it's the first time ever in any project I've been on where the software was entering into territories where you could be sued. And therefore we had legal counsel saying you must not provide the information to say, yes, this is a baddie, or you shouldn't give. You had to just provide it in a more obfuscated way, which again, as a designer, usually I need to provide it in the way that's simplest to understand. Actually, we had to obfuscate it slightly because then the decision would be made by the analyst, not the software. I don't have time to tell you about this one. Yeah, okay. But actually, this is the best of all. So I'm going to tell you that over drinks, if that music's playing, I will definitely explain this to anyone that's interested. So, thank you very much for listening.